Coming up on the Ministry of Car, why the supercar is suddenly affordable to just about anyone who can afford a new car. But this is not going to last for long. Welcome back to the Ministry of Car. I'm Utkarsh, coming to you from Singapore. Now, I'm driving an F10 M5, and it strikes me in this world of 2025 when everything has become really expensive, inflation hit us really badly after the pandemic, so on and so forth. It is incredibly difficult to get value in anything, let alone cars. The problem is more pronounced in my country of Singapore, which I won't get into here. So what do you really do? Well, you take advantage of three things. And three things have come together to make this particular car, which is the F10 M5, make the unattainable, which is the supercar dream, the dream that every petrol head has. Three things have come together to make it attainable. Let's get into it. Number one, what is it that makes a supercar? Because let's be clear, the supercar is not just a dying breed, it's becoming a very expensive breed, because in the last 10-15 years, so much money has been created at the top end of the market. Many people have become crypto, startup, millionaires, billionaires, so on and so forth. That the supercars that existed in really small numbers have become really expensive. A McLaren F1 is like a several, maybe $10-20 million car, so on and so forth. So the supercar is a rare breed that has become very expensive. Yet, you can kind of distill down what a supercar is, and we'll talk about what that is in a second. The second bit is taking advantage of depreciation. There is a cycle for a car. There's a cycle where a car goes from a new car where it's very expensive, then it becomes a used car, which becomes less expensive, then it becomes a very used car, where it becomes its cheapest. And then suddenly, something magical happens, it becomes a classic, and then prices start going up again. So it's about catching things in the right cycle of depreciation. So that's the second thing to take advantage of. And the third thing to take advantage of is really things that manufacturers didn't do from stock on certain cars, but that can be done very easily to really make a car much better now that you have the benefit of hindsight. So let's talk about these three things. What is it that makes a supercar? What makes a supercar is not 0 to 100. It just isn't. It's about how a car makes you feel. It's about how a car sounds. It's about how a car handles. 0 to 100, you can buy a BYD or whatever today, or a Tesla, or whatever that's called, performance or whatever. Clearly, I don't care about electric cars. And you'll get your 0 to 100. What makes a supercar is the sound. What makes a supercar is that it handles in a way that is adept for the racetrack, even though you're driving it on the public roads. And what makes a supercar is that it is actually frustrating. It is not as good as a normal car, honestly. It's not as comfortable in a way. If it was just like a very comfortable, just like a device that you could forget about it, that you wouldn't remember the drive, you would just fall asleep, it wouldn't be a supercar. Supercar needs to be loud. It needs to be basically grabbing your attention all the time, mostly for good, sometimes for bad. So that's what makes a supercar. When I look at the latest modern breed of super saloons, if I look at the M5, which is the G90 M5, if I look at the very latest Mercedes AMGs, they are extremely fast. They still have a V8 or a petrol engine, whatever, though the Mercedes went to the 4-cylinder, they're going back to a V8 now. But what they don't have is that ability to shout, because noise regulations, pollution regulations have quietened these cars. They don't have that final rawness in the handling and direct feeling in the handling, because again, noise regulations, or rather fuel efficiency regulations, pollution regulations have taken away things like hydraulic steering, and ultimately they are now profit building marketing exercises in a way, because they're basically built for people who want an M5, who want an RS, who want an AMG, but they may not necessarily want to live with the downsides of an M5, an RS, or an AMG. So it's kind of having your cake and eating it too. That's what those cars are. That makes them incredibly fast, incredibly capable, but that makes them less super. A supercar is something that's a little bit irritating, a little bit imperfect. So note that. That's where something like this comes in, because what we have here is an F10 M5. And on the face of it, it's a big comfortable saloon, just like the G90 M5. But what's very different is, because it has three things that are less than perfect and two things that can be improved, going back to my third point, it practically becomes like, it gives you a supercar experience. If you've ever driven a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, other than being very low to the ground, which you could say is part of the experience, but that aside, it gives you everything else. What does it give you? It gives you a very direct feeling for the road. Because what happens is, hydraulic steering in this car, though it may not be as good as the hydraulic steering of the 80s and 70s, you compare this to any car, you compare this to the F90, you compare this to any modern car, you are leagues ahead. It is no comparison. Then you have the engine. This is the 4.4 V8, but this was the first generation, really. Well, it's the second technically. The first one came out in the X5 and X6Ms, which I won't count. The S63TU, combined with a loud exhaust, or a aftermarketed good loud exhaust, not a loud really, but a beautiful exhaust, a soulful exhaust like an Akrapovic, which is there in this car. That combined with the direct steering, combined with the DCT gearbox, not an automatic gearbox, but a DCT gearbox, that combined with a chassis where you have stuff like the rear, the rear subframe is mounted directly on the chassis, and in this particular car's case, you have KW V3 coilovers, so you have a very direct connected feeling. My wife summarized it best. My wife, who's not a petrol head, when she drove the car, she said it feels grounded, like it's connected to the ground. It does. When you combine those recipes, this car is nothing like any fast saloon, super saloon, sporty saloon, M340i, whatever you can think of. It just isn't. The experience in this is more akin to driving one of those older rear-wheel drive supercars of the 90s, albeit with a lot more torque, because this thing is a monster. So the torque also is something that makes this car something that only a more experienced driver can drive well. This is not step into it like a Tesla Model 3 Blade or whatever it's called and floor the throttle and watch the horizon go by. This car needs to be driven with respect, like a supercar. So in a way, even though the F10 M5 is not that old, it came out in 2012, it was selling all the way to 2016, so less than 10 years ago this car was new. It has such an old school feeling of needing a good driver, of being directly involved, of literally trying to be a very honestly what it is, that it is basically very different from any other modern sports saloon. So that's the first thing. So the F10 M5 gives you the supercar sound, especially with an Akrapovic exhaust. It gives you the supercar handling feeling, especially with KW V3 coilovers. And it gives you that total analog feel due to hydraulic and DCT. Yes, of course, manual would be better, but the way these BMW engines have been designed, it's that DCTs work better. And then the other thing you get in this thing is something very akin to a Bugatti Veyron, which is that intake sound, which is just incredible. Can't really show it in Singapore, but when you accelerate this car and you go beyond 3,000-4,000 RPM, it just gives you that beautiful, almost like, it's like, this is, unfortunately not, I can't really show it to you in Singapore, but be rest assured that watch the video for the latest Bugatti, whatever that was, the last W16. There's a hissing intake sound that you get from the turbo. You also get it on the Pagani. Oh, and there's a there's a car that thought I was racing with them. I'm not, I'm just talking. And Singapore's not the place to race either. But yes, there is that turbo whooshing intake sound that this car does. So even though you could say it's not naturally aspirated, the engine is the standout feature of this car, very honestly. So that's the first point. What makes a supercar is the direct analog sound, feeling, experience, and the F10 M5 with two modifications, which is the Akrapovic exhaust and the KW V3 coilovers, which make the car's engine most exciting and the handling more direct, make it very supercar-like. Let's get to the second point. depreciation. Now we are at a very interesting stage. I was reading the Autocar article of when this car came out. The original, I have access to the full Autocar archive. I pay for it. I think it's fully worth every dollar. So free plug here for those folks who, even though Autocar is not paying me anything, the Autocar archive is amazing. Second point. When this car came out, at that particular point in time, this car new was probably like, I don't know, 70, 80, 100,000 pounds, whatever it was in the UK. You could get an E39 M5 for like 6,000 pounds then. Today, an E39 M5, anything decent, I'm talking UK prices here because Singapore prices are not relevant to most people. And UK is just a good benchmark, I think. In Singapore, you will cry when you know how much these things cost. But just taking UK prices, today, F10 M5 maybe you can get it as low as 12, 15, 20,000 pounds. And E39 M5 starts higher. It starts at 20,000 pounds plus and beyond. What happened? Did the E39 M5 suddenly become a better car? Not really, because E39 M5 always had a great reputation. But the problem was 10, 12 years ago, when this car came out, E39 M5, so before I was interrupted, 10, 12 years ago, in 2012, 13ish, E39 M5 was a 10 to 12-year-old car. This is a very low point in a car's depreciation cycle because the car is now a very used car. It's not old enough to be a classic, because classic cars are really more than 20 years old, and that's when people who remember when they were young, they wanted one of them, and they grow up and they suddenly have enough money to buy one of them. That's kind of how the classic car cycle goes. The E39 M5 was a very used car then, so it was very cheap. Today, at this point in time, in 2025, the very used car is not an E39 M5. It's crossed over to classic territory. It's between 20 to 25 years old. The very used car is this. It's the F10 M5. It is at the lowest point of its depreciation cycle. So whichever country you are in, a used F10 M5 costs less than the average new car, easily. So it is affordable. There is one caveat to this affordability which we'll get into later. But the point is, don't be fooled by where a car is in its depreciation cycle. Right, 10, 15 years from now, people will be comparing E39 M5s and F10 M5s, and probably both will be similarly priced. And the reason why I say both will probably be similarly priced is, though we look at the E39 M5 with very rose-tinted lenses right now, last proper manual M5, naturally aspirated, the everyday car, I would say as a real M5, especially if you really want to live with it every day, it's not a collection item. If I had to get one car today, I would choose an F10 M5 over an E39 M5 every day. First big reason, safety, right? Because the F10 is way safer than the E39. Beyond that, number two, usability. Because you could see the E39 M5 was kind of modern, but it's not really. The F10 is exactly modern. In fact, it's the right kind of modern because the dials are still analog, yet it has everything you need. My brother, who's really into tech, he has a modern GLA 35. He thought that he would find the F10 M5 old-fashioned, but he was like, no. From a tech standpoint, it has everything you need, and it doesn't have any of the stuff you don't need. So it'll be a lot more modern car. It'll be a lot newer car, so parts will be easier to get by. Already today, E39 M5 parts are getting more and more difficult. Whereas F10 M5, it's because the F10 was sold in such high numbers. The F10 M5 was sold in such high numbers. So the F10 M5 will be a car that you can get the parts on very easily. And then finally, beyond all of these practical considerations, I think this is a better everyday car because it consumes less fuel, but more than that, it handles better. It doesn't handle as lightly as an E39. E39 probably feels a bit sharper, but this handles better because the way this car handles defies physics. The DCT gearbox is incredibly exciting when you want it to be exciting, and it is incredibly easy to use when you want it to be easy, like in traffic. You can't say the same about a manual gearbox. And ultimately, the world will change as well, right? So the generation that grew up on the E39 M5, everybody drove manual. The generation that grew up on this car, not everyone drove manual, but at the same time, they may not want to go all the way to an EV. They may like the idea of paddle shifters. I know I'm from that generation, right? My first car was a car with a paddle shifter, a Scirocco, with a very infamous 7-speed DCT, dual clutch transmission, the Volkswagen dry clutch. Many people would know that. So what I'm trying to say is that you are just thinking that the F10 M5 is worth less than the E39 M5 because you are in that stage where the F10 M5 is a used car, very used car, and the E39 M5 is a classic. Don't let that dissuade you, because remember, the E39 M5 was also damn cheap 10-12 years ago. So that's number two. Because of the depreciation gods, this car is now at a price where it is cheaper than any new car that you can buy today. Number three, and this is the important bit. How do you really get your cake and eat it too from an F10 M5? Because this is not, I'm not advocating go out and buy the first F10 M5 that you see. I think there are three things, that is going back to my third point, three things for my third point, that need to be true for an F10 M5 for it to truly give you that supercar feeling. Two of them are mods, one of them is a maintenance or a engine thing. The two mods that are essential are an Akrapovic or any other high quality, probably I would say branded exhaust where it's been done by experts. Akrapovic I think is really good. To me it's the best sounding one, but I'm sure others have different points. And the second bit is the KW-V3. These two things transform the car. Without it, it's a saloon with a V8 which does handle well, but it doesn't sound that great and doesn't handle that well. It handles well enough. The V3s and the Akrapovic transform the car. So that's the first thing to note. The thing that is very important for these cars, and this goes back to also why I would say that this car is not affordable for long, is you need to get an F10 M5 in the right condition. The right condition can mean one of two things, though one of them is preferable. One is that it's a low miles late car, ideally later than 2014-15 car, where the issues that the original 2012 to 2013 cars, the initial S63TU engines, are already taken care of, and you have a car that has been well maintained. Because this car, again, going back to supercar tendencies, you have to warm up this car. You have to take proper care of it. Once you warm it up, it will take a beating. But if you don't warm it up properly and you beat it anyway, then this car will come back and bite you. So you need a car that has been low miles, later car, confidence of being maintained. That's one option. But even on that kind of car, you have to note that at some point in time, this engine will need addressing, because an engine rebuild on this car is not an if, it's a when. It just is. This is just kind of the way this car is. It's okay. Some cars will probably go a very long time without needing it, especially if they've been maintained well. It's so dependent on the user. But when you're buying a used car, there is no way you can have the confidence that the previous owner has taken such a good job, unless you know the person or whatever. So that's one thing to note. The second thing to note is, if you want a car that you want more confidence on, ideally look for something that has already had an engine rebuild. Which is why when I was shopping for this car, I got this particular one, in which case the engine has been rebuilt already. So this car has 150,000 kilometers. The engine was rebuilt at 135,000, 15,000 kilometers back. And it was rebuilt with updated BMW M5 competition 2015-2016 parts. So for all practical purposes, I got an engine with 10,000 kilometers on it, which is ideal because, and I know who drove it for the last 10,000 kilometers, my friend. And I know how he drives. He may drive an M5, but he's a very responsible, very decent driver. So there's that. So you need to buy an M5, and which is why I said the title of this video is, it makes the supercar affordable for only for a short while. Right now we are in that stage with the F10 M5 where you may still find some low miles original owner ones, or you may find ones that have had a recent engine rebuild. Those two are very easy to find right now. Even on the classifieds you go right now, you might find either of the two. That will change, because the older these cars get, more and more cars will be bought by people who are just buying them for the sake of buying it because they're super cheap. They will not take care of it. They will not have the money to maintain it. And because it's such a powerful car with so much torque, a lot of them are going to drive it off the road. It's a given. This car, like even for someone like me, who tries not to be too irrational, but even once when I went full throttle on this, I did not expect the tail to come out and I had to catch it. It was a very hairy moment. So this is the car that will definitely, many of them will go off the road, because now that they're so cheap, relatively speaking. They will be bought by a lot of people who will abuse them, not take care of them. Either the engine will blow or the car will be crashed out. So the supply of the F10 M5s is going to change dramatically, right? So now is the window where you can actually buy one that has maybe original owner, maybe very rare to have an owner who's had it for 10 years, but you may still find them who's actually maintained it properly. Or more realistically, you'll find something that has had an engine rebuilt with receipts from a proper M specialist like this car. So there you go. So the F10 M5 is a future classic in the making, the last M car with rear wheel drive, DCT, hydraulic steering, more power than you would ever imagine, and it is ridiculously affordable, but not for very long. Alright folks, hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.